if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, ooh, you need specialized cancer treatment, then what happens is that they have to send it to the insurance company, and the insurance company approves it, and then the insurance company is actually the one who sets your case. Right? So that's the way it works. So there's one agency relationship here between you and your doctor. And there's another agency relationship here between the doctor and the insurance company. Because the insurance company, they don't know whether or not the doctor is doing the right things or not. So they have to somehow figure out, is the doctor doing the right thing? And you have to figure out, is the doctor doing the right thing? So there's two agency relationships. And the worry here is that this doctor is going to try to do more things to get money. And the worry here is moral hazard. Right? The worry here is that what will happen is the doctor will do too many things, unnecessary things. And so therefore, it's really moral hazard. And sometimes it's also, that the doctor will get more money by doing more things. But oftentimes, when they're asking things to improve, they're not getting money directly. What they're asking for is basically just to approve some type of treatment or something like that. So it's kind of like, this is a moral hazard problem, and this is more of a principal agent problem that is what's called supplier induced demand. So supplier induced demand. That's the issue. And so an example of this first cropped up in the 1960s. In the 1960s, this happened in New York, is that there was, upstate New York, is that there was a town, and they brought up the hospital too. There was a town, and it had a small hospital. Right? The small hospital had 200 beds. And right next to it was being built a big hospital with 400 beds. So that the town had a hospital with 200 beds for a long time, and then right next door was building a new, brand new hospital with 400 beds. So when this occurred, they assumed that what would happen to this hospital? Well, business, right? Would no longer exist. Because essentially, this new hospital had 400 beds. And so therefore, it was a nicer hospital than anything else. So they assumed that this hospital would go out of business. And when the new hospital opened, sure enough, it was filled up. But also, this thing remained filled up as well. So the question was, why is it that if they had a 200-bed hospital and they built a new 400-bed hospital, why would both of them be full? So what's some reasons why it is that both of them could be full? Yeah.
Because you always need patients.
Say it again.
You always need room for patients.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. So always need room for patients, meaning there's more patients out there who need to come in. Right? So one possibility is that there was unmet need. Right? There are all these patients out there in the community who needed hospitalization and they weren't getting. That's one possibility. That's another possibility. Or maybe they were just getting someplace else. Right? So maybe they were having to travel to a distant place, and so they had to travel. And now they don't have to travel because it's nearby. That's another possibility. Right? But there's another possibility too, which is that, so what is the unmet need? Another possibility is that, well, maybe these people in here stayed longer. So maybe what happened is that when they just filled up the hospital, so that rather than, when someone would come into this hospital, rather than discharging them, they just have them stay. So let's say if someone came in to give birth, and back then they used to have people stay about 3 hours in the hospital, right? So if you stay about 3 hours, 3 days in the hospital. Stay 3 days in the hospital, they might say, why don't you stay 5 days? Was it better for the mother to to stay 5 days rather than 3 days? Is it better to stay 5 days in the hospital rather than 3 days in the hospital? You just gave birth. Yeah, it depends, right? So you can imagine that there's situations in which, yes, the person definitely would stay. On the other hand, like after my wife hates hospitals. After the first child, home in 3 hours. After the second child, home in 3 hours. She just didn't want to stay in the hospital. So she was kind of crazy. 5 days in the hospital. But, a lot of people, especially back in the 1960s, 70s, 5 days was the norm. And the idea was that it would go through and that it would give you time to, to learn how to breastfeed and get some sleep. And, usually at that point, fathers weren't really expected to take care of children. And so, you wouldn't have to send home this mother with a worthless father and things. So there were lots of reasons why it was that it seemed that would be beneficial. So from a pure health standpoint, would it be beneficial? Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, in the same way that at any time, going to see, if you said all of us were going to go see a doctor once a month, would it be beneficial to see a doctor once a month? Well, it would hurt, right? We might go in there once a month. Anything wrong? You say, not this month. But maybe sometimes we get things that go wrong. So it's like if you think about clinical benefit, or clinical benefit means that is there any type of benefit? It does have some clinical benefit, staying longer. On the other hand, it's like, well, what determines, like right now, they usually the 1 day is the longest time that you can stay in the hospital and give birth. So after 1 day, they want you out. Why do they want you out for 1 day now? Has things changed? Have fathers become better in the last 50 years, where by now they're better at taking care of babies, and so therefore that's why they send them home? Why do they say to women say 24 hours and then you're out? Say that. Or flip it the other way, they don't get paid more. So they get paid usually they get paid a certain amount per birth. And that they oftentimes, unless there's complications, they don't get paid more for longer periods. So therefore, if you give birth and you're out in 24 hours, they get paid the same amount as when you give birth in 3 days. Unless something occurs, right? Unless something happens whereby you've got some kind of problem or whatever, but then they can tell the insurance company, oh, there's a complication, and so that's why they need to stay more. Other than that, but back then, most of the way that payments were made in the 1960s was that, if someone stayed for 1 day, that the insurance company would pay for 1 day. If someone paid for 7 days, the insurance company would pay for 7 days. And so there was no, that there was no kind of urge or need to get people out. So the claim, the thought was that, well, the reason it filled up is because, either there was this unmet need, but when they looked at it, it didn't really appear that there was unmet need, that much unmet need in the community. Or what was happening is that, they control how many, who was in the hospital. And so they were essentially having more people in the hospital. So this type of situation led to the formation of hospital boards. So in I think your book talks, your reading talks about this as well, is that in counties now, in the state, like this, California has the Office of Health Services, something. I don't know what OSHPA stands for. But it's basically a state agency that controls, that regulates hospitals. And the reason that OSHPA exists is because, one is just to look at quality of care and things like that. But the other one is that they're the ones who say that, yes, you can put a hospital here. So like if UC Merced suddenly got $1 billion and decided to put a hospital down here on Yosemite Avenue, is that they would have to first go through the state and say, we're going to put a hospital here on this corner. Would the state let UC Merced put a 300-bed hospital on the corner of Yosemite Avenue? Who would be upset? if the state, if California refusing to set up a hospital and use money, who would complain? Say that. Yeah, Dignity Health, right? Dignity Health would say, we don't need another hospital. We, for our population, our 300 hospital here at Dignity Health, more than serves them. And for any type of tertiary care, they could go. And so, UC Merced can make the case and say, oh, no, there's all this unmet need out there. But they would have to make the case. And the reason that they have to do all this is because of this type of situation. That when, that they found is that when more healthcare hospitals get open, they always fill up. I was telling you about down in, where my family lives down in San Marcos, they built a new Palace on the Hill Hospital, and Kaiser's building a new one right now. And both of them will, 100%, 1,000% certain, both of them will be totally full all the time. Okay, but you can also just look at what happens when doctors come into a region. So, if you think about, like, if McDonald's wanted to open another hamburger joint down here by Radius, let's say, what would happen is that, well, they'd be competing with Five Guys and what's the one across the street now? What's called Burger Stop or something like that. That's it. Yeah, it would have it all the rest. And so what if McDonald's came in and was just much better? Then what would happen to Habit and what would happen to Five Guys? Well, they'd probably lose business, right? And so that's a sort of competitive situation. On the other hand, when doctors go into the region, what they notice that doctors, so like the new doctor, I'll draw since I'm doing such a good job. So let's say you have two doctors in a region, and a third doctor comes in, right? So what do you think? And they have all these patients. They have a full slate of patients. So what's going to happen here? Well, you would think, oh, they're going to lose some of their patients, and this doctor will get patients as well. So therefore, that their income, the amount of money that they get is going to go down. But what they find is that when doctors move into the region, they don't necessarily, their income doesn't go down. So why is it that when a new doctor comes to town, the incomes don't go down? Well, there's two kind of reasons why, or two hypotheses why. One is that doctors have a certain type of income level that they target, right? So they have a target level of income that they think this is what I should be earning. And so if you see the number of patients going down, what's your two ways that you can get more money? Let's see, their income is equal to the number of times they see patients. See a patient times the number of patients times the amount that they charge per patient, per visit. Right? So their income is the number of times that they see a patient times the number of patients times what they charge per visit. So if this thing goes down, then what's their options for getting more to get their income back up? Well, you could raise your prices, raise what you charge, right? Or you could have people visit more. So you have two ways then of kind of doing this. What does it mean to have people visit? How would that work? Well, does anyone try to see a doctor here? How long does it take to see a doctor here? Like if you called up today and you didn't have an emergency and you wanted to just make an appointment for a check, how far off in the future would you be? Would you be making an appointment? 6 weeks? Something like that? Right? 5 weeks? So 5 weeks. Well, what if that, if they suddenly lose more patients, then what do? Well, they might say, sure, you can come in tomorrow. So it's one way. The other thing is that, so you go in there, and that, you have an appointment, and they say, oh, what's wrong? And you say, well, nothing except my elbow hurts. They could say, well, here, take this cream and go away, and you'll be fine, right? Or they could say, take this cream, go away, and see me next week. So in the second case, is there a clinical benefit? And that's the key thing. Is there a clinical benefit from them seeing you next week? Maybe, right? But if the clinical benefit is low, or if the clinical benefit is, doesn't exist, then that's supply reduced demand. Because basically what they're doing is that they're having you come back and pay them more money because they've got an open spot that they want to fill, and it doesn't have any benefit to you. That's supply reduced demand. And it exists because of an agency relationship, because you don't know, right? You with to have them look at your elbow, and that when they say come back next week, maybe you need to, maybe you don't need to, you don't know. The agency relationship. So that's what supply reduced demand means, is that they're either raising their prices higher than because they're raising their prices, and you can't tell whether or not the extra cost is something for which it's needed or not. Or what they're doing is that they're coming through and that they're increasing the amount of visits that you have to have. Clear? Okay. One of the questions that comes from this is that, well, why don't they just jack up the prices all the time? Right? So because this agency relationship exists, when you go to the doctor, they could say, look, our copayment now is $100, not $50. So why don't they do it? Well, one reason is because they're dealing with the insurance company. Usually the insurance company is the one that sets the price. Having said that, there are ways around it. Like, have you ever heard of the concierge service? Ever heard of this? So the concierge service that's where you just pay a doctor like $5,000 and they promise to see you. So I have a friend who I went to graduate school with, and he's a psychologist, and he moved back to Pennsylvania, and then he met his wife and moved to New York City. And his wife was really, really rich. Her family was really, really rich. To the point where, they had their wedding reception in the Natural History Museum of New York, the dinosaur statues and dinosaur skeletons and everything. So they have a lot of money. And we went back to visit them because there was an event back there, so we went back and then we stayed. And so it turns out they have a really nice place on the upper east side of Manhattan. It's great. They have private. While we were there, they had the private tutor come in for their son's chess. So they're teaching their son chess by a private tutor. So it's sort of a different world than I think the rest of us, I assume the rest of us live in. Well, I asked them about their health care, where do they go to the doctor, things like that. And he got kind of sheepish, and then he finally says, oh, well, we have a doctor that we go to, and they pay $50,000 a year for this doctor, just cash, right? Pay $50,000. The doctor doesn't accept insurance, so everything has to be cash. And then what this doctor will do is it promises that they'll see him anytime that they want. So, they can call him and say, hey, I would like to make an appointment tomorrow. The doctor will say, you're in. And then the other thing they'll do is that this doctor will get referrals for him. So, he broke his ankle, I think, or hurt his ankle skiing. Of course, it was skiing. Hurt his ankle skiing, and so he gets home from skiing, calls up his doctor. The doctor sees him immediately. I don't think the doctor even saw him. The doctor just on the phone said, well, I'll get you an orthopedic surgeon. I'll look at you. And half hour later, the head of NYU's medical orthopedic division calls him up and says, oh, I hear you hurt your ankle. Of course, I'll see you tomorrow. So why was the head of NYU's orthopedic division willing to see this guy within, 24 hours? Well, because he's got a deal, the head of the orthopedics has a deal with this concierge doctor, where if whenever this doctor wants to see, one of the patients wants to be seen, they'll see him. And in return, he gets paid whatever the insurance company's going to pay, but then he also gets paid $1,000, whatever it's going to be, from this concierge doctor, and that's the way they work. So that's a case where what they're doing is that they're basically setting prices really, really high, because they're not going to have very many patients, because you couldn't have a lot of patients to do this. But at the same time, all the visits are going to be on house. So, so does supply and induced demand exist? Well, it's something for which there's a lot of worry about. That's why you have a hospital board that basically exists to control hospitals. It definitely exists with this way, where they're worried about insurance companies worried about it. For most people though, most people have, that because they have insurance, that the insurance company decides how much that the doctor's going to get paid. They don't have to worry about the fee increasing, about money increasing, the price. But they do have to worry about the number of visits. So what often happens is that insurance companies monitor the number of visits people have. And so if you're someone who keeps coming back to the doctor's office all the time, then the insurance company will have special programs that they'll put you in, where they'll try to basically monitor, reduce the amount of times that you come to the doctor. Because they don't want to be in a situation where you're just going back and forth. All right, questions about that? So that's basically agency relationship. Okay, so like I said, I gave you all these lectures on history, so you can go through them all. I'll give you a brief overview and things to look for, because as you'll see, I go through a lot of slides on these lectures. And the reason that the bigger picture thing of what I want you to get out of this is, one, is to understand why it is that we have the four systems that we have here, the VA, the Medicare, the private insurance, and the uninsured. Why we have all these things in the US, and why other countries don't. And then the other thing is that there are these common problems that all healthcare systems face. And so our system, in our system, we have certain problems that other systems don't have. But on the flip side, we don't have some of the problems that other appropriate systems go through. So I'm giving you, I'll put these slides up. Here's a bunch of terms. So these are the terms that when it comes to midterm time, I'm going to assume that we kind of know what these terms mean. So what I'd say is that take a look at these terms before you start going through the slides, just so you can recognize where it is that, what it is I'm going to be looking for. And I'll give you like a brief overview of what it is that for each of the section. So I break it up into things sort of before the 1900s, things from 1900 to 1945, things from 1945 to 1970, things from 1970 to 1990, and then from 1990 on. And then I also have I talk separately about public health, because there is this question about, well, so what is the role of public health in the healthcare system, and what's our public health system that we have right now, public health program, how do we get it? So the first one is before the 1900s. So in terms of the health of the population, look for what's the major causes of death and disease and illness, right? But also, how was health viewed? And this becomes when we start looking at when I talk about some of the ways that what healthcare could do, is I go through readings. So the question with leavings is just when what they would do is that they would, if you were sick, is that they would actually take the blood out of you, because they have the theory that, illness was caused by the balance of humors in the body. And so if somebody was had a fever and they were hot and red, that must mean they had too much blood. And so you take blood out. And so it was just sort of different, a different philosophy for medicine. And so because of it, they did things like that. So just understand, so it's part of that sense, understanding why it is that these things could go on for so long and work correctly. Because it gets into the issue about what healthcare is. Patent medicines arise because people are looking for certain type of treatments. Hospitals, so why do hospitals arise? And well, people use hospitals. Spoiler alert, cancer is no. And then also what was life as a doctor? That is, how were they trained? How was the medical profession organized? And what was it like to just be a doctor? But these are the same type of kind of themes to go through the rest of it. The major thing to focus on that's different in this period was essentially why health insurance arose. Because back here, no health insurance. By the end of 1945, there's health insurance. And so the question is, why is it that health insurance arose? And when you move to this era, the 1945 to 1970, then the question is, well, so why didn't we get universal health care? Because that's the period that other countries got universal health care, and we didn't. So the question is why? And also, why did the government become involved with doing Medicare and Medicaid? Because that was introduced in this period. And where was public health? Also, just realizing that this is kind of, this era is known as the rise of medicine. So it's the era, this 45 through 70 is sort of seen as the golden age of healthcare, of medicine. Because it's where we have all the big advances that we still kind of are the major advances even today occurred during this period. In 1970s through 1990s, this is where the cost of healthcare became suddenly an issue. And so because of that, you start to see that how healthcare is organized changed. And that specifically, you start to see HMOs, health maintenance organizations arise. So just, understand why it is that health maintenance organizations arose and what was the problem they were trying to solve. And why was there suddenly a focus on quality of care? Because before this point, if you think about during there, is that healthcare was, doctors were sort of at the highest esteem level. They were seen as all these advances in medicine to do all these things. By the end of the 1990s, is that there's a big realization is that a lot of the quality of healthcare is not good. And so government is now getting into both controlling costs and also trying to figure out how to increase the quality of healthcare. So that's in the from 1990 to now, we have two different things going on. So one is the rise of evidence-based medicine. And evidence-based medicine kind of arises as an attempt to improve the quality of care. And then the other thing is that there's a whole bunch of things that happen in terms of the government, either the state or the federal government, coming together trying to figure out how to improve the healthcare of healthy people. So there's what's called the Oregon 1 experiment and the Oregon 2 experiment. And there's the Massachusetts Health Plan, and then there's the Affordable Care Act. All these things are kind of related. And so then what was public health's role, and then finally, what did the Trump administration do to try to basically kill the ACA, and why didn't it succeed? Should we roll back? The ACA and why didn't it succeed? Okay? So when we're done, when we come back next Tuesday, I'll basically go through a bunch of questions and the type of questions that you should know in the midterm that are based upon the lectures. So watch the lectures over the next week. Questions about that? So last thing then, the next topic then, after this, is basically coordination and integration of care. So one first concept to understand is the episode of care. So what an episode of care means is that is what happens from the time that a healthcare incident starts to when it finishes. That's your episode of care. So take this. Consider that Brock Purdy goes out and is playing, gets injured, and injures his arm. Let's see, breaks his arm in the next game. Not breaks it. Let's do something more minor. Gets a serious bruise in his arm next game. So that's his injury, right? What would his episode of care look like? So the way to think about this is, all right, so gets injured during practice, let's say. Gets injured during practice. So what happens? So he's laying there on the ground, holding his arm. What happens? Yeah.
They evaluate what was wrong.
Who evaluates it?
The trainer or whoever the medical person is.
Yep. So they have trainers standing by them, just watching the game, rush out, look at them, and what happens? So they say, uh-oh, looks injured.
And then it would be like whatever is the proper health for it. And then put them on the stretcher. Or I don't know about the stretcher, but then people walk.
Probably bring the cart, right? Bring the cart, probably maybe put his arm, bring the cart, wheel him back. Where do they wheel him to? Like he's at the San Francisco, the 49ers practice field. Where do they take him? Well, they probably have X-ray machines right there on the facility, right? Because they probably do X-rays, so they bring him back there, and then they help him over, and they give him X-rays, and if they say, "Ooh, it's not broken, but it looks like it's that there may be some ligament damage." So what do they do next? Do they call up one of the Merced's orthopedic specialists and try to get an appointment? No. They have an orthopedic surgeon on call that they can say, we need to bring Brock Purdy down right now. Brock Purdy's quarterback. We need to bring him down right now to look at it. And so they would bring him down, and that they would instantly get in. And so they say, oh yes, you've got some ligament damage, and so therefore, we're going to put you through rehabilitation. Where would we get the rehabilitation? In the facility, right? I mean, they have physiotherapists there, so they would do the rehabilitation for him. So every day they would make sure that he was there for his rehabilitation. If one day he called and said, "Oh, my car's broken. I can't get down. I can't drive down there." What would they do? Or let's just say his arm was hurt, so he couldn't drive. What would they do? They'd send the car down for him. They'd drive him there. And they make sure that if he was supposed to be on some special diet, they would make sure that he had a chef on a special diet. And so and then this goes through, and at some point then they reassess him again and kind of get back out there. Right? So that episode started from him laying down on the ground to when he's finally either his arm's not going to be fixed, and so he's out of the league, or it gets better, he's back on the team. That's the episode of care. So the episode of care starts when he gets injured. It ends then whenever happens. It doesn't mean it's necessary. The episode of care doesn't have to be when he's 100%. It could just end when he's whatever he's going to be. So let's say that there's an elderly woman up in rural California, or just here though. There's a woman, someone lives over here in Granada, who falls down and hurts her arm. We do the same injury. Falls down, hurts her arm in her house. What happens? What's her episode of care? So she's laying there, hurt. What happens? Sell that. Call, who calls? Maybe she does? Yeah, I mean, if she's elderly, you know, one of the big issues that sometimes elderly, when they fall, they can't get up and, you know, especially if they break a hip, that they could lay there for a while. But let's say that, you know, someone comes by and says, "Ooh, you're hurt." Then they call an ambulance. Okay, so they call an ambulance. Where's the ambulance take her? Where's the ambulance come from? Man, I don't know. I guess mostly Mercy. Would Mercy have, would all the ambulances be at Mercy? I don't know if they have ambulances at different sites around, if they're all in one place. I don't know. Let's say Mercy. So it drives out there, gets there in some amount of time, and they look at her and they say, "Ooh, you're hurt." I mean, by that point, she has family members. They probably just put her into a car and take her to the hospital. So it could be as if they call the ambulance, but it could be that the family member just takes her down. Takes her down to Mercy Hospital. What happens when she's in Mercy Hospital? Well, she sits there
Fucking
for a while,
god. This is
unless she's really bad, right? Because you know when you go to Mercy, waiting for they triage. So triage means that they look at
Iron 3.
really seriously.
Dude, oh god, that's like your heart stuck Iron 3, bro.
And so then, if, you know, her with her arm, they would probably just kind of sit there.
I stood like right here.
And after a while,
Alright, if you don't get a kill through this one, or at least damage done.
could be 20 minutes.
It's a great lineup, trust.
You just don't know. At some point,
Oh, wait, watch. Let me know. Who's there?
And they might at that point say, "Well, you might actually." So then,
You over there?
send it off to
They're slowly
you guys know.
Alright, look at it. Look at it, look at it, look at it. That would have been good if they rushed. That's not bad.
You know, someone will come by and say, "Well, you not working."
But I want that. Let me help you. Are you ready? Left up. Oh no, they're on the spawn, in the spawn. Oh my gosh, why do you have a Vandal? 104 again. No way.
Last player standing.
Why? Damn. Why am I still the only one? Guys, what are we doing?
Because you're in Mercy. When they say this is
Million bops.
when they say this is
Alright.
this is this. So they want you-
Million
so
bops.
they want you
Hopefully they don't stack with
go
us.
ahead and make the point. This is.
Yeah, there's an app. It might be free site.
It kind of depends, right? Because it's not like. So yeah, the Mercy is part.
Okay, I need to so you just fucking I have my oh my god, don't peek, please. Dude, oh my god.
So they maybe give it a scratch. She didn't have a way home. Probably would find
Match point.
and then she's there, and you know, she calls and figure out who it's
Where?
They probably give you some information. That's a common thing. They give you the information.
I didn't get the pig. Lord. Alright, GG's.
So then she goes home, and what happens to her?
Ooh, wait.
Does she go to physical? It depends, right? Depends on whether she knows to go to physical, whether she can, you know, get there, whether she is a physio who can see her. So it depends on lots of different things that go on. But at some point, let's say she goes to physio, they say come in twice a week, and so she would either come twice a week. At some point, then she's either better or she's not. And that's what episode is. Right? So both of those things are episodic. So if we look from the outside then, look to see well, how do we identify what episodic care is? Because you know what episodic care is doing is it's telling you how people move through the healthcare system. And it's telling them the process by which they get care along the way. So what would you like to see? Well, you'd like to see, you know, kind of she gets to, she's able to get to emergency room, right? She gets there quickly, they don't make her wait a long time, they go through that, they know the x-rayer, and they do x-ray her, and that someone knows how to read the results, and that, so you can just sort of see it's that there's a whole bunch of things along the way. Does it have to be like Brock Purdy? Is Brock Purdy, should that be the way he's treated? Should that be the ideal that we go for? No, probably not, right? I mean, there's probably not gonna be a trainer sitting here in your room just waiting for her to fall down. So you're gonna, so that's not a realistic type of sort of thing. I mean, it is for, if you're someone for a professional football player who is worth millions of dollars, then they're willing to spend money to give you that type of sort of thing. But for most people, it's something else. But at the same time, having an episode of care whereby the person has to lay on the floor for wait long and then wait for 8 hours and maybe see if it's good.
I'll try this. Fuck.
So when you're talking about how we look at what that episode is,
Where are you at, Bob? Let's see where you're at.
so one is that we look at
She also lost 19.
Hey, where's Kai at?
that's the episode.
She got like
The other
iron.
way is that
No. Oh yeah.
When it gets
Oh my god.
and the clinical guidelines.
Oh, no, it's on our D right.
Should happen. So if you compare the clinical guidelines to what people actually do, is that then you can see the difference between what they should do.
no.
and what they actually do. So like if you take clinical guidelines,
I get him.
they sort of describe.
Oh, there he is. He's all the way back there. He's all the way back there.
And then you then compare Brock Purdy
No
to that.
escape.
You would say, oh, Brock Purdy got really good care. On the other hand, if you compare this one to that, you would say, oh,
Like,
you would
Oh my god, bro. He got me in a shoddy, I'm crying.
what are these clinical guidelines? What used to be back in the pre-internet days is that
Don't
the
give them
clinical
credit.
guidelines are like guidelines, right? They're books.
oh my
Sort of
god.
list. In case they're sick. And these are the things that happen to them. So someone has this type of complications, and these are the things. So, they're,
Talking about
they were actually books that were
one of the.
and it used to be is that you went to a doctor.
Yeah, it was a.
Wait,
and you had all the
11.
Can't go see what the
on
fence.
the booklets.
Like, I
Eight.
Well, it gives you an impression that they're always going to just walk over and say, well, let me see how this is good. In reality,
I kind of want the Nerf gun. Fuck.
Fucking god, I did not mean to do
Yeah, I kind of want the Nerf.
But they were there.
It's full. There's so many people playing
I just want
Valorant.
this.
There's so many people playing Valorant.
Defenders win.
So clinical guidelines, what they are is that they're basically recommendations for how people should be treated, and they're very specific.
No, how much did I
Does she
have?
have water?
That they, and the idea is that they should.
Well, you might want to go check if she has water, Mom.
And what they're supposed to do then is that they're supposed to
Okay.
augment
Either 2 or 1
the
game.
providers too.
Who the fuck's Pops?
And they
Oh.
are.
Oh, is he
Play
retarded?
right there. It's a good 2 nights ago.
I don't
Why are they deviating?
rush by goddamn black lady.
What people should be doing. Alright, so different type of clinical guidelines,
Yeah, pop off, motherfucker. Pop off.
One
Damn
enemy
right.
remaining.
Damn straight.
clinical guidelines in
Do
my
not.
experience, they usually run by special
Chat, what the hell is-
disease. So they usually special.
That's two of the worst things ever.
How all these different conditions are treated. What they often do is they write these things for.
Come here, Raze. I'ma fuck you up,
The
dog.
idea is that you should
What is that? Odin?
what they-
Ew!
what
Over here.
they found
Let
is
the
that
guy.
oftentimes GPs
They're on
don't
B.
use it.
Please, hurry.
So one of the ways that
Is that
move in
like B in advance?
is that
Fuck.
is to try to make clinical
I don't even know what the fuck that is, bro.
on the computer. So like if you go into the GP,
Spike planted.
asking the symptoms.
What's evil? Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. Oh fuck.
He's right there.
Everybody knows.
You're right.
They may have an idea.
Are you kidding me? Are you?
And so So
Get a load of this mother.
what they
Oh,
Got
time to
the
commit
kill.
suicide.
The kill.
The fuck, please. Eat my. Go crazy. Fuck, damn.
Yeah,
What the fuck wrong?
Spike
Chikayo. Didn't I say watch B? Oh my fuck balls. I'll be back.
are you fucking kidding me?
player standing. Attacker
Go
wins.
down.
Get my.
So how
Everybody
kind of
done
the
with Valor
guidelines
right now.
developed?
Hey, what time is it?
Well, the idea is that you get all this evidence, and then they go through and they do a systematic review. And the systematic
Hey,
review
boy, we're Pokemon.
comes up with the different kind of guidelines. So
Oh.
systematic reviews are not just literature reviews. Systematic reviews in medicine are things where they not only assess just the literature, but they have to use the quality measures that they use for the studies. So if you ever pick up, if you ever go to a journal and you find a systematic review, what you'll see is that when they talk about the systematic, when they give the evidence for the systematic review, they'll do things like, what's our search terms? How many articles did we find? What was the criteria we used to eliminate articles or to specify the articles we can accept? So they put all these things into a systematic review. And what they're trying to do then is they're trying to get some kind of quality of what they're doing. The kind of the gold standard of these things is Cochrane reviews. So if you ever want to look up some type of condition, you can go to the Cochrane database and you can then Google what the Cochrane database says, what's the best treatment for foot infection or whatever it's going to be. The Cochrane reviews, they kind of go through that they do these systematic reviews of these. There are different groups that do these Cochrane reviews. They're usually hospitals. And so what they do is that when someone comes along, they will kind of do the initial review of it. And then they have a whole process that they use when they go through it, right? All the way down for these Cochrane reviews. I was actually on the guidelines group for stroke. So this was when I was working down in New Zealand. I'd done a bunch of work on stroke. And I'm a health economist, so I don't know anything about clinical medicine, but down there, when they do guidelines, they like to have economists or health economists along, because one of the things they're supposed to be looking at is sort of value for money. So when they do some kind of make a recommendation, they're supposed to also try to assess, does it seem like it's a good idea, a good use for money? So they invited me to come to the meeting. It was a 2-day meeting, and get there. It's in a place in a hotel, kind of by the airport. So fly in, go in this room. This room is just full of doctors and nurses, and also the people who did the systematic review. So it starts off by the systematic review people. They stand up and they say, well, here's the latest evidence on all these different things. And so then they sort of present different things like thrombolysis for stroke, which turns out to be something that if you can get thrombolysis in like 24 hours, that you get all these different kinds of better outcomes and stroke units. So if you ever have a stroke, you want to go someplace where there's a stroke unit where it has much better outcomes. So there's all these different things that they go through the review. And so some of them, so what they're doing is they're saying, here's the new evidence on all this stuff. So I kind of, sat there and then they, after that was done, then they say, okay, let's go through the clinical guidelines. And so what they do is they basically take the episode of care and they start, and they go through each part of it. They say, all right, so what do we know about people when they have a stroke? What's the best way for the emergency specialist to treat or to deal with them in the first time? And okay, when they get to emergency, what's the best way? So they essentially just follow along the episode of care. And what they're looking at is they're looking at the amount of evidence, what's the best way to do this. So what I learned from this is that, at least for stroke, I think it's probably for most things, there really isn't a lot of evidence for most things that go into these clinical guidelines. For example, what's the best way to triage a stroke patient? It's not like there's studies where they try different type of triage methods. They just, hospitals have their own way of doing it. And so what will happen is that someone will stand up, usually a doctor, usually a male doctor, and say, well, in my clinical experience, the best way to treat this is blind. And then someone else will say, no, in my clinical experience, the best way. And so they have this argument back and forth. And then, usually they come to some type of agreement on what's the,
I think you need to
best way
put
to
them
do
to
it.
the same
And so then that's what goes into
It helps.
So what you get at the end of this is you get kind of a very well thought out, some of it with evidence, some of it without evidence, about what the best treatment should be. And then that's your clinical guidelines. And so the reason that it's then used is that whenever we as people from the outside look to look at what kind of care people are getting, is what we do is we wait and see what's the clinical guidelines say. After stroke, people should be treated within 24 hours by stroke. That's clearly the best outcomes. And then we look to see, well, who's treated for stroke? What percent of people who is it not treated? And so when you do that, then what you can get out of this, that you can get one, just how good is the quality of care, but also that's where you look at health disparities, because you can sort of see, well, if people in the San Joaquin Valley are not being treated within 24 hours by stroke, and stroke, and people in the mid are being treated within 24 hours, is that that's what we're saying. So what the clinical guidelines can do is that they can kind of tell you where it is that they help you identify health disparities too. And by health disparities in this case, places where better healthcare could be, better outcomes could be achieved if you have better healthcare. All right, we'll tell you, let's go ahead and stop there. Start there on Tuesday. So again, no lessons. Watch the lectures and talk about it.
That's it. Until next time.